Alright, to practice our layer masking and our adjustment layer use in Photoshop, we are going to use Photoshop to create a creature out of multiple other photographs of real animals. I realize that most of you can't get photographs of your own, so for this one, feel free to go grab photographs. You can get public domain ones or you can get Creative Commons ones. That's best. But I do realize that this is one, it's much harder to go out and get your own photography for. So one really big important thing about this is that while we can smooth two images together, while we can edit color, we can edit shape, size, things like that, one thing we really cannot change is the perspective within a photograph. And because we can't change that perspective, it is going to be problematic if we can't find good source images. So for example, in this image, I have a shark coming towards the camera at about a 45-degree angle to the left, a little bit less, and about 10-degree up angle. This means that I have to find a photograph that is at least close to that. Of course, it can look like, the animal's head is turning one way or another. But in this case, in something this sleek, it would be hard to make that look right. I found a pair of images that I think are close, and I'm going to try them out. I'm going to mix this shark, and I'm going to put a pig head on it, or piglet's head on it. So let me go get one of those images. First off, I'm going to try, I think this one looked really close. I'm going to try that one first. It's also a very cute pig, so he gets the vote. Now, this is a problem. My pig is backwards. Pig is backwards. Also, I can't quite see where he's going in this, right? Like, I can't lay this on top here. So we can go to Edit, Transform. Right now we're in a free transform, just as if we had hit Command-T. Every time you play something, it will do this, just like last time. Transform, what we are going to do is we are going to flip horizontal. That flips this, so now it's facing in the same direction that my shark is. But we're still not perfect, right? We can still see that this head angle and this head angle aren't quite there, so we're going to try to get closer. The way we're going to do this is first, I'm going to change the opacity of this layer up here in the Layers menu. I'm going to change the opacity down to maybe 60%. That way, when I grab this, I can see both images at the same time. Now I'm going to rotate this. And I'm just going to try to do my best to line this up. We can always come back. Oop, and of course, I did that thing again. Of course, we can always come back and edit our image again later. So if we get close to the end and we realize that this isn't quite right, we can definitely edit it. But it is much easier to do it now than it is to do it later. So I would suggest trying to get as close as you can at this early stage. Alright, and I'm actually going to put the head right about there. Alright, that looks pretty close to me. So I'm going to hit enter. Now, I need to return my opacity to 100%. And again, I'm going to turn off this being a smart object by hitting rasterize layer. That way it's just pixels. If I knew I was going to do a significant amount of rescaling, I actually want to leave it as a smart object because that does not change it into pixels that are on this level. It's still pulling from that original image. This image is now the same resolution as the background, even though I scaled it down. So if we scale this up, we're going to have problems. But from what I saw from my image, I should be okay. And also, just realize in Photoshop, sometimes you're going to have to go back to the original images and work forward from there. Alright, let's start cutting this guy out. Again, our first thing, let's get a layer mask. Better make sure we got white and black down here. Paintbrush. Make sure we're on our layer mask, which we are. Alright. I have a soft brush. I don't really want that. I'm going to get a hard brush and then I'll work in on the edges. Because again, we can work both ways should we want to. Really get in there. So I definitely want his little ear, so that's adorable. And I'm just cutting around the kind of the neck and where the chin is. You can kind of pick your own spot for this, but that's what I'm gonna do. And again, we got to make that inside edge, so the easiest way to do that is flip back and paint it back in. Oh. You might be able to hear me when I do individual clicks, and sometimes I do that just because I know I need to take away exactly that little bit of the object without, you know, brushing from one place to another. This computer is also relatively old, so you can kind of see that jumping that it's doing as I drag the brush. And sometimes that puts a brush spot not in exactly the place that I want. So it's one of those things of you just kind of got to know your hardware, know how it works for you, and really just know how to make it work for you. Right? You got what you got. Can't change it. You can. It's expensive. So sometimes you just got to work with less stuff than you would prefer. I'm going to cut into the ear just a little bit right here. Do that same method. Alright, I like that. And now remember, all that art is still there, so if we want to brush in any of this fur texture, any of these spots, that should be relatively easy for us to do. But I'm going to get a bigger brush and get rid of the rest of this really quick. It would help if I had the right... There we go. Alright, well I think that's about in the right place. Probably should be tilted down just very slightly, so Command T. And I'm going to give this just a touch of a rotate, like that. Enter. Paintbrush again. Whoop. And again, I just painted on here, so that's no good, so Command Z. Switch to my mask. Get rid of those two spots. I did not realize they were there. Oh, we brought that in, so we're going to get rid of that. Now I have a problem. You can see the tip of my shark's nose out here, and I definitely don't like that. So, the way we're going to get rid of that is the same way that we worked on the bushes in the previous piece of art. I'm going to make a copy of my background layer, because I don't want to mess it up. And I'm going to do a clone stamp to get rid of that nose. So I just know that I need about that much. We can look up here at the measure and I can say that I need to go to about 4.5 inches clean, and that will get it out of the way. So I'm going to turn this one off. I need to get to 4.5 inches up here. Now let's get clone stamp tool. Now let's find some art that is close enough to this that I can use it. See, this is a problem because we do have very aggressively different colors on each side. So I'm going to have to be cautious with this. So I'm getting close. There we go. That looks pretty good. You don't really notice the repetition. And I need to get something from up here, but I just realized this little white spot is going to show up quite a bit. So I'm actually going to pull from I'm actually going to pull this spot right there. There we go. That looks pretty clean. I like that transition. I'm getting a little bit too much of this green here, so let me put some blue back. Alright, that looks pretty solid. Let's turn the pig on. Yes, now my pig has no issues coming back. It looks like it will work just fine. Alright, well now I have a problem that this is kind of a harsh line. It's kind of a really harsh line. So I'm going to see if I can get a little bit of smoothness between these two areas. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go for my layer mask. Get my brush. Oop, we want a brush, not a clone stamp. I want a smaller brush, about that big will do. I want to go to very low hardness, 0 is fine. And then one thing we can also do is, because I want to paint this in sections, I'm going to take my opacity down quite a bit. Go down to like 25%. I'm going to switch to show, because I want to fuzz some of this in. And you can hear me making repeated strokes, possibly. Oops, see, we're getting a spot in our pig, so we probably want to undo that. X, let's get rid of that spot, just because it's going to make it easier for us to work on this thing. There we go. Now we get this nice little smoothness. We can actually leave the jawline intact if we wanted to. The other option would be for us to clone stamp that out. Just looking at this, I think the jaw works pretty well, so I'm going to leave it. I do not like the sharpness down here though. So I am going to take this very soft brush, get it very, very small, and I'm going to fluff this out into the rest of the water. Go to flip to show. There we go. Just get that little bit of softness on the edge. So when we zoom out, it's not quite so aggressive right there, and there's a little bump. So again, we just flip back. And this is the nice thing about this. You can just massage back and forth until you're really happy with the way it looks. There we go. Alright, well this one was actually pretty quick for our mix-in, but it doesn't look right. Right? We have, the shape is okay. I mean, we can't see where the spine meets, but that's probably alright. But it just doesn't fit. And it doesn't fit because it's not the right color. And actually, come to think of it, I want to bring this belly of the shark up right here. See how this line right here continues forward and then goes away? I'm going to bring that out in my piglet. So I'm going to go to show, and I'm just going to bring a hard line up with that. Well, not a hard line, but you know, I'm going to suggest the continuation of that line. And you can see that with a smaller brush, I'm going to get these issues with it. If I zoom out, see how that looks terrible? We don't want that, so I can use this to really give me a nice hard shape. Then all I have to do is flip it around, get a nice big fat brush, low opacity, switch colors, and then give that a nice fade on the way back in. See that? Now I have a really clean fade, so you can paint it in hard one way and then fade it back the other way. Now, still doesn't look quite right? I got this bottom edge, that looks okay, but we're just not quite getting it. And there's really two big reasons that this doesn't feel right yet. One of them, and the smaller one, is highlights, right? Look at the highlights on the shark. You have white up here, it is very bright white, right? The sun's coming in from the top, very bright white here, and then you have a very blue shadow down here. It's a very even shadow. It's not a harsh shadow, but there is a shadow, and there's definitely a harsh highlight. In our pig, it looks like the shadow is down here and to the right, this direction, and our highlight is this direction, whereas on our shark, it's this direction, right? Highlight comes in from this way, shadow looks like it's coming out this way. I just noticed that there are 2 people back here. I will have to get rid of them, because that's just terrible. Or I can just crop the image, that works too. And then the other, more important thing is that this color isn't right. Right? Like the color just doesn't work at all. Well, let's fix the color first. Before I do that, before I start messing around with this, I like this piglet a lot, so I'm going to make a copy of it. I'm just going to turn one of them off. That way the one that's off is kind of a save step. It's kind of a save point, actually. You know what? We should go ahead and save this as pig shark. Right? We need to save our files and make sure that we are keeping them and saving on the regular. Alright, so we now have one that we can play with, and we have one that we've kind of stored away for later use just in case we screw this one up real bad, which is possible. So we're going to go to image. We're going to make sure that our image is selected and not our mask. Then we are going to go, let's start maybe color balance. That one kind of gives us the most tools. Let's see. So he's kind of a reddy orange color, a pinky orange color. So let's take some of that out and move towards cyan. Well, that's not quite right. Let me back that off just a little bit. And we can see that he's more yellow than the surrounding water. So let's play with that a little bit. It's gotten us a little too purple maybe. So I'm going to back off that. Now, do we need more green or do we need more pink? I'd say a little bit more green. Not a lot. That might be too much. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to keep moving these. And now we can mess with them individually. We can see that our highlights are pretty white and a little bit green. So let's go ahead and bounce those highlights. It's getting us a little bit purple. And let's play with those shadows before we move too far. And this is something that you do really need to spend some time with, and don't expect to get it on the first pass. You're going to keep wiggling these around until you kind of get what you think you need. Oh, that's starting to get there. There we go. Picking up those shadows really helped. Alright, that's really getting there. Alright, let's go play on the midtones one more time. Make sure we're at where we want to be. There is a tiny bit of yellow in these midtones, but you know what? I think I'm going to leave it, because I think it looks alright. I think one issue we definitely have is see how gray this highlight is? See how white this highlight is? We're definitely going to want to pull that down. But let's leave this alone for now. Image adjustments. How do we pull down that white? Well, let's try curves. And with curves, we can pull down our white and black, just like we can with levels. Oh, that's not the right way. Going to grab this and pull it down. Now I can see that that and that are getting close. This is a little bit more cyan. But now I've darkened up the whole thing too much. So what I want to do is probably bring my darks up. Right, because the darks in this are pretty light actually. I'm actually going to use this to do a drop contrast. It's a little too dark. Let's keep playing with this. Now I have these big dark spots. Definitely want to get rid of those. So let's bring these spots up as I'm kind of fading out those spots. You kind of got to look at it and see what you've done, what horrors you've created, and whether or not that looks right. And one big issue with this is also this is going to look really different on different people's screens. All you can do is kind of work the best you can with what you got. I think that's pretty close. I do think there's a little bit of extra saturation in there. I'm going to pull some of that out. I don't know, bumping saturation looks okay. See if shifting hue one way or the other helps. Nope, 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 ruined it. Lightness. That's about right. Now we do have this a little softer on the edges, but we can work on that in a minute. Alright, and one thing that we can do to make our lives not easier, but kind of be able to investigate our object more accurately, is we can go down here, and we can pick up a layer filter. And in there, I'm going to grab Invert. I know this sounds deeply insane, but I'm going to grab Invert. Now, one of the things that Invert does for us is by switching everything, it takes out the reality. Now I can just analyze. Now I can say this here is just way too dark, right? The nose, this part, that all feels kind of right. I have a little bit too much, maybe pink in there, but then I can see it in the fins here. This is a little bright, but I do have that much brightness here and here. So this is something that's a really nice thing. You can just put this layer in, and you can look at this and say, well, you know what, that's actually not bad. Or you can say, ooh, there's like an edge here that we have just got to get rid of. So if you're working in really, really light or really, really dark, this is a good way to kind of check and make sure that your work is good, and then just turn it off. Right? We can just turn that off. And of course, it's, you know, mind-numbing to see those two colors right after each other, but we can just turn that off. Let's go through and do a little bit more work on this guy. We have a little bit of this blue uplight from the bottom. So again, we like our little pig, so I'm going to make a copy of him. Oop, sorry, no. Be nice to use the right tools. Make a copy of him. And this one, we're going to do the uplight. Right, we definitely have some blue uplight going on in here, and I definitely want to get that. So here's an uplight. First thing we want to do is this layer mask, apply. Now it's done. Add a new layer mask like this. Now let's get just the bottom of this head. So let's go normal, opacity. Let's bring our opacity up. We're gonna go fast and loose on this guy. And we're gonna go bigger here. Alright, I'm gonna paint top half of this head out, and then we'll fix it in a second. So I just did a rough paint out of the top half of the head. Select this, not the mask, image, adjustments, and let's get in for some color balance. We really want to push this part green. Now see how we can just control that part? A little bit heavy blue, but let's see. Alright, that's getting us there. It's mid-tones. Shadows. Shadows, let's shove pretty far blue. Oh, that's not the right color blue. We definitely want that kind of cyan color, don't we? Alright, now our big thing. I'm going to hit OK. Now we need to adjustments, and I am going to use curves again just because it brings me happiness. I'm going to lighten up that bottom part. See that? Now I'm getting this to line up. This is starting to feel very similar. but I can see that there should be areas that should be this color, and there are some places that are not this color. So alright, cool. I've gotten this bottom to match. It's pretty good. But now I want to fix this. I want to fix my mask. I want to make sure that my colors are where they need to be. So I'm going to get a smaller brush and work a little closer. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. We're going to get to show some of this. And I want some of this to be highlighted. Oh. Now I can see something. See how aggressive that went? It went almost neon. So I'm going to undo that. I do not like. And I'm going to get a really low opacity going on. Like 15%. Now I can kind of scrub in just the highlight. Right? Like the bottom of this ear should have that same up highlight as the rest of the image. Right? It's the bottom of the critter. Same thing with this here. Should probably have a little bit of that up highlight underneath it. Of course it's black, so no matter what I do to the original image, it's going to kind of stay dark, and that's okay. But I can get a little bit of that black, or that blue, sorry, up here in that ear and get it looking right. Let's see, where else would need that? Maybe a tiny bit, just right there on the snout. Alright, yeah, see how we have kind of that almost neon-y glow coming up from the bottom? And if I think the whole thing is too much, that's okay. I can grab this, and we can go back and use our opacity for a finished layer. So I can knock this down, or bring it up until I feel comfortable with it. If it's too neon, just take it out. Just pull it back until you feel that that's doing what you want it to do. Alright, I think 90% on that looks pretty good to me. Now let's see, we need a top down. We want some of this white. We definitely might want to pull some of this white down. So let's get another copy of our piglet. Put it up top. We can just move our layers like that. Now of course that just hid everything because I put this on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply that layer mask. Get a new layer mask in there. And then I am actually going to just go ahead and scrub out the entire head. Oh, it would help if I had opacity up, wouldn't it? Alright, there we go, that's much better. Now I have all my blue glow in there. So what we want to do with this is kind of match the back gray of this shark to the top of the head of this piglet. And we could do this the other way, right? I could go in and grab the shark and brighten up the back of the shark to match the white here. But I really just want to mess with this. I want to do this one way to show you guys how to do it. And then when you're working on your project, you can do it however you like. Whichever way works for you. Alright, so that area there is definitely the offending area. Let's knock our brush size way down. Get white. Paint in this. Alright, so I've got that area. I can see that there's a little white hole in the middle of my mask here. Grab our layer, image, adjustments. Let's just do levels. We haven't used it yet. It's a nice tool. We want to really come in here for this gray. So we are going to do actually output. See how we're bringing that down? Look at that. Of course we can't get detail back, right? Anything that's in the highlights is going to be blown detail no matter what. But we can bring it down pretty close. That gray and that gray are now really on par. Now we can also do the same thing with the black. This black is way darker than this black back here. It is a little bit closer to the camera, so it should be a little bit higher contrast, but not by much. So let's bring that output level up a little. And now I did not paint this in, so I'm going to have to be cautious with this. So I'm just going to do it just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to get my white. Now I'm going to paint in, oop, not like that. Go to layers, then paint in. What are you doing, thing? There we go. And then X, get black, get rid of the bottom because we have some of that glow coming up. And you gotta remember to not undo the stuff you just did. So that's a really important thing. You gotta be cautious about not undoing what you just did. And I can check that by just turning off these layers and seeing what I'm editing, right? I can just see that. I can get white and I can kind of figure out where is appropriate for this. Right? Maybe out to there, but probably not. Let me get a lower opacity so I can get better fades. There we go. That just gets the top of his head. I can leave his eye alone. That just gets that top of the head just that much closer to this back. I could even tune the color while I'm at it, which let's go ahead and do because why not? Let's get some color balance action. Again, it looks like we're a little too yellow, so a little more cyan. And a little bit more blue. Now it might be a tiny bit dark. Might be a tiny bit dark. And since we're in midtones, I'm going to go ahead and put those at least close to back. And I'm going to go to shadows, because I think that's really where this yellow is living, is in the shadows. There we go. It's a little bit high chromatic, but we can work on that too. Image adjustments, hue set, pull saturation down. Let's go to there. A little bit of lightness. No. Okay. Now let's turn back on those two heads. Let's see if that lines up a little better. It's getting pretty close. That front spot I might want to work on a little bit more. But overall, I've got my uplight from the bottom. I've got my light on top. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. And this is one of those things that you can just spend forever touching up every little thing. But really what you want is just at first glance, you want it to just not be wrong. First glance, you want it to not be wrong. And actually, you can see that there's a problem. See this shift? It looks like I moved one of these layers. So I'm going to fix that really quickly. You see how the chin wags back? Oh, you see how the chin wags back and forth? Yep, looks like I moved one of those. Yeah, and you can see all these lines are horizontally blurry. That horizontal blurriness indicates that I bumped one of the layers because I grabbed this tool. It's bad habit, but I grabbed that tool. There we go. All right. You can kind of see it snap back to where it wants to live. All right. Oop. And a little bit up. There we go. See, we're not getting any movement flipping that on and off. All right, much better, much better. There we go. Now we don't have that shadow on that corner of the mouth. Everything looks clean. I'm pretty happy with that. We do have a touch of yellow in here, but I'm going to leave it alone for the purposes of this assignment. It's just not really worth worrying about. When you guys go and do yours, it really depends on what you're going to be using it for. If you're going to be using it on like a piece of art that's going to be on your wall forever, then it probably needs a little bit more effort. If it's something where I'm just showing you guys how to do stuff, not so much. Let me... Pixels. It's a relatively small image overall, 1024 by 768. So what we're going to do here is we are going to crop our little guy down because we don't really need any of the rest of this. We kind of just want to focus on our fish, pig, shark thing. So let's go ahead and do that. Crop in like this. And then that gives us our selection, again, right there. Image, crop. That just cuts us down to that. You can actually see that all that art's still there. So we can still move things around should we really want to, but that does it. Command D in Photoshop, D as in dog, does not redo the same thing like it does in Illustrator. It deselects. So Command D is deselect. Command A is select all, but Command D is deselect. So that gives us our strange and horrible little pig creature. One thing I'd be really careful with this project is I want you to put together 3 animals. Take 3 animals and put them together. One thing you should be cautious with is animals with fur are really hard to get the outside edge right, but they are really easy to get the inside smoothing between parts right. Animals that have sharp edges, like sharks and fish and snakes and lizards and stuff like that, are really easy to get the cut around the edge, but you have to be far more cautious in how you put it together inside the animal, because those are actual structures as opposed to just a field of pattern, kind of like fur is, right? A scale doesn't fade into fur, it would overlap fur. So you kind of have to be cautious on how you're going to put those things together. So that's your project. 3 animals, put into one, make it look as realistic as possible. By doing the work ahead of time and finding images that have the right angle on them, then it's just a matter of going through and doing these things that we've done today and changing color and making it all look correct.